All right, we're after 1 o'clock and we're already broadcasting on YouTube, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So we appreciate everybody being here and all those in the audience. And let's just go ahead and take a moment. And first, we'll recognize those of the committee here. Excuse me, if I can have everybody here. Thank you. First, we'll recognize those of our council here at the table. And then let's go to the audience and just we'll recognize those in attendance here. And then we'll go online and we have council members attending there. Marcelle, would you please just start and introduce yourself there?
Thank you. I'm Marcelle Shoop. I'm with the Saline Lakes Program for National Audubon Society, and I'm sitting on the council representing conservation and environmental interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelle. And Scott?
Scott Paxman with Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. I'm representing the reclamation projects in this state.
Very good. And Scott is my left-hand man today, our vice chair. And I'm Corey Cram. I'm from the Washington County Water Conservancy District. I'm the chair of this organization. Todd? Oh,
Todd Stonley, Assistant Director of the Division of Water Resources. Do you want to do the council members online?
Yeah, that'd be fine if we could do that. All right. So we have Dustin.
Yes. Dustin Jansen, Director, Utah Division of Indian Affairs.
We can't hear you, Dustin. Can you, you're on mute still, it looks like.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
We're still not hearing you.
We can hear Dustin
We'll come
on
back.
the online
Let's
group.
try. Let's go next to Ken. Ken, can we hear you?
This is Ken White from Utah State University.
It looks like we have an audio problem with the system maybe here. All right, we'll work on that for a second. Can we go over to the audience? And Norm, can we start with you and Bronson?
Yeah, Norm Evansted. I'm with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I'm the Assistant State Conservationist for Water Resources.
Very good, thank you.
I'm Bronson Smart. I'm the State Conservation Engineer with NRCS.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jodi Gardberg. I manage the Watershed Protection Section for the Utah.
Good to see you, Jodi.
My name is Eric McCulley. I'm with the Utah Reclamation Mitigation Conservation Commission.
Very good, thank you, Eric. Hey, sure.
My name is Martin Bush, but I'm Assistant Attorney General working with the Division of Water Resources.
Thanks for joining us, Marty. Yeah.
Tom Warren, I'm an area specialist for water resources.
Okay. Hiding in the corner.
My name is Suzanne Lisa, citizen.
Thanks for joining us.
Dan Adams, Lang Group, the team that's helping with the Community Act.
Very good.
Danny Reston.
Yeah.
Peter Getzel here with
All right, and over here.
Ted Starman with Work Regarding Chief Bids. Evan Curtis, Governor's Office of Planning and Budget.
Very good, in the very back.
I am found that I work with the Division of Water Resources.
All right, thank you. That's everybody here. Should we try online again?
Dustin said that they can hear each other online, but let's give them another try.
Dustin, can you try talking with us, see if we can hear you at all? We got a promise of a sound.
He's on mute.
Check your mute, Dustin.
How about now?
Now we've got you.
Perfect. My bad. Dustin Jansen, Utah Division of Indian Affairs. Good to be here.
Thank you, Dustin. Thanks for joining us. Next, let's go to Ken White, please.
This is Ken White, Utah State University. Good to be with you.
Thanks for joining us, Ken. And Mark?
Yes, Mark Stratford, General Counsel, Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District, representing the Utah League of Cities and Towns.
And Mark clearly has his ears on. Oh, and we skipped Chris. Let's go back to Chris, please.
Hey, good afternoon. This is Chris Hamlet. I'm the Director of the Utah Division of Emergency Management.
Thank you. And Warren?
Good afternoon, Warren Peterson. I will say, after telling people for a long time that I was a repenting attorney with 15 years of sobriety, I've now been appointed as the representative attorney on the Watersheds Council. So
we need to reinitiate that 10-step process or something?
that would be helpful, Corey. I think so.
Okay. And Ricky?
Hello, everyone. Ricky Ranko Browning. I'm president of the Utah Petroleum Association, representing industry on the commission. And apologies that I am very much engaged in that role. I'm tied up out in the Uinta Basin today, out in Duchesne.
The field office. Well, thanks for joining us where you can there.
So Kim Shelley is not yet online, but she's going to join us.
Okay, so we are expecting Kim Shelley a little bit later from environmental quality, and we're hoping that we may see Joel Ferry as well. And I guess, Todd, do you want just in the absence of Joel, do you want to make the announcement of Joel's position?
Yeah, for those of you who have not heard, we have a new executive director here at the Department of Natural Resources. Formerly Representative Joel Ferry is now our executive director, and he's by his position is now a member of the council, replacing Ryan Steed.
So we're glad to have him at the department and also on our council. So thank you everyone for your attendance online here, virtually and also in person. We do have an agenda, and has everybody had a chance to review that agenda? I'd make a motion or accept a motion to accept that agenda as presented.
I'll move to accept the agenda as presented.
All right, I've got a motion from Marcelle. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
I've got a second from Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We'll move forward with the agenda as presented. The first thing we have on our agenda is announcements and information on the land and water planning integration from Marcelle, and she's got some backup. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Corey. Before we launch into what the announcement is, could I indulge everyone and give a little background on what integrated land and water management planning is? Many of the policy and recommendations reports that have come out over the past 5 or 6 years have been focused on looking at ways to improve water conservation in the municipal and industrial context. And, that includes the 2017 Governor's Recommended Strategy, the HCR 10 recommendations for Great Salt Lake, as well as several of the reports that came out of the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council. And I believe even in the state water policy, and I can't quote you the code section, but in any event, one of those important aspects of trying to get to conserving more water in the M&I context is looking at ways to better integrate land and water planning. Traditionally, land planning has its own path, and people invest and make decisions about land planning without thinking about, oh, now we got to get the water there. And so this is an effort to try to start moving those processes in tandem. And in order to get all of that started in 2021, the Utah legislature appropriated, I think, $250,000 to actually help communities actually do more to integrate land and water resources. That funding was supplemented by funding from the Great Salt Lake Advisory Council to put together a Utah-focused water assessment that communities could undertake themselves to see how they're doing in that frame. The program, which Rachel's going to tell you a little bit more about, has kicked off now, and it means that there are going to be some workshops for communities, and that's municipalities, counties, groups of municipalities or counties, and important stakeholders to try to look at ways they can better integrate water planning and land use planning. And it's really terrific because it provides resources that they don't already have. So now the the Division of Water Resources is responsible for the project, but they have Laura Vernon from Forestry, Fire, and State Lands on the project team, as well as Rachel Shilton and Candace Hostenegger from Water Resources, and I'm I guess an ad hoc player too. But in any event, consultants are on board, and Rachel's going to tell you a little bit more about that and the upcoming workshops. And we really hope people will get the word out, because there's an application process. And if anybody's wondering why they should do this, if they don't already see the benefit, there is legislation now in place that municipalities and counties of a certain size have to integrate a number of water conservation measures in their general planning processes by 2025. So thanks for indulging me in that background.
Thank you.
So this is a PowerPoint presentation, but it will be short. I wanted to introduce you to the Integrated Water and Land Planning Workshops that the Division of Water Resources, in conjunction with Forestry, Fire, State Lands, and the Great Salt Lake Advisory Committee or Council are promoting, and that this was an act that was funded by the Utah legislature in 2020, and this part of it was initiated in 2021. We'll see. There we go. Okay. This is the information about the workshops. And if you picked up a copy of the letter from the sign-in table, it has the same information on it. This workshop is available to municipalities and counties, as well as communities. It's not an individual person workshop, because it's designed for those communities to gather together to actually build a plan that they can implement. So we're looking at having all of those players that are important to creating a plan that is actionable and that they will be able to implement in their communities. You can go to the division website that is listed here, and it's also on that email that was sent to find information about it. The Division of Water Resources contracted with a consultancy team that is made up of the Babbitt Center, which is a center of the Lincoln Institute for Land Policy. It's Western Resource Advocates, and it is, and I get their name always wrong, so I have to come here and see this, the Center for Water Efficient Landscaping that is out of Utah State University. And the Center for Waterwise Landscaping gives us the specifics that are unique to Utah. So it is customized for Utah communities, and they provide that insight and information. This team has vast experience with successful workshops like this through Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, and this will be the first one in Utah. So we are excited to have that inaugural workshop coming up in November. This is just a few slides about what the workshop looks like. From those photos, they're kind of small, but you can see that it is working groups. These are active, being engaged in the process workshops. And what the community comes away with is an action plan to develop their planning process and then to implement it. And at the close of the workshop, the consultancy provides technical assistance to developing and implementing that plan. So again, this is just the information about the workshops, and I encourage everyone to spread the word among your communities. We did send out emails the end of June to a lot of municipalities that we had contact information for, and to some agencies like the League of Cities and Towns, Wasatch Front Regional Council, to spread the word to their members and other agencies that we might not have contacted. But if you have a concern or you want somebody to receive that email, go ahead and email me. My email contact is at the bottom of the letter that was sent out, and I will distribute that to other participants as well. So thank you.
Before you run off, questions for Rachel?
Oh, could I just mention one more thing? I was lax in mentioning somebody else who deserves some credit, and I don't want to embarrass him, but some of the impetus for these ideas, I want to thank Mark Stratford, who led the Municipal and Water Conservation Working Group for the HCR 10, and that's where a lot of this thinking came up. And then there are a host of other people that came together, started thinking about what was needed. And I won't repeat all of their names because I don't think I could. But anyway, there are lots of folks that really deserve a lot of credit for getting this positive program up and running.
Very good. Any questions? Did you have something?
Yes, just a question. I see the eligibility for municipalities and counties, but how about the water providers? Are they invited to this? To participate?
Absolutely. Okay. So yeah, absolutely, Scott. Water providers, that's the whole intent of this, is to get the planning divisions together with the water providers so that they're working together. They're not developing plans and then just going to the water providers and saying, we're going to have this whole new community and you need to provide them water. So that's the whole plan, is to bring those two together.
And let me ask you about the locations. So locations, is that to be determined, and will it be different locations, or is it 3 days in the same location, or what's to be expected there?
The location for this first one is in Salt Lake City. We believe it's going to be a Utah State University satellite campus office in Taylorsville. The subsequent ones, we have funding for at least 2 workshops. We're hoping that we'll have enough savings and other funds that we'll have 3. So the second workshop will be someplace else through the state. It will be the same location for the entire workshop, and it is scheduled for mid-November, 15th through 17th. And we do ask that the applicant that is accepted, that they commit those 3 days to the workshop. So
okay, so I was confused. So the workshop is a 3-day workshop. It's not a repeat, 3 different days.
Right.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you for the information and the presentation. We had a brief Joel sighting. I'm sure he'll be back. And thanks for joining us, Kim. Appreciate you being here. That's all right. Let's go to Joe. Oh, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the presentation that Rachel just gave us, you're dealing with something moving target as you have elections and new people taking office in counties this year. Is this timing of the second workshop such that it will be after January so that new county commissioners will be sworn in by then, or do we need to make sure they get invited to a workshop that may be before they even take office?
So Marcelle or Rachel, can you address that question, the timing of the second workshop?
The first workshop's in November. The second one would be after the first of the year, is my understanding. So Warren, let's see, 16th, 17th. So I don't know that the new elected officials would be sworn in by then. But
no, they're sworn in on the first Monday of January. So the second one should be able to pick up, should be available to them. That's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So Warren, it will depend on the location of the applicant that's accepted for the second workshop, but we would reach out, and we would expect the applicants to also reach out to their representatives in the legislature for that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And we probably ought to more formally recognize Warren as being an official member of the council. And we're sure glad to have you as part of this, Warren. And then, Joel, could we turn some time over to you to introduce yourself? We're glad to have you here as part of this committee and with Natural Resources.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to be working in a space that I love. That every once in a while, if you get I've done a few interviews and they say, "What keeps you up at night?" And I say, well, these kind of issues do, but they also get me up in the morning, and that's what matters, right? I love taking on these challenges and trying to work through these issues. And so for those of you who don't know me, I think I know most of you here, but recently came over from the legislature to take on the role as director for the department. And we've got some big challenges ahead of us. And this, the watershed councils and these issues that we're dealing with are a crucial part of making sure we have a way forward and a vision for the people of Utah. So really looking forward to tackling these issues with you. So thank you.
Well, thanks for being a part of this here. So next we have Jodi, and this is almost like a little reunion.
Yeah, I know.
When I was hired in Utah 18 years ago, I came from the state of Pennsylvania, where I was working for the Commonwealth there. They call it a Commonwealth. And I was working as a watershed manager and came to Utah to do the same thing, working on the Virgin River. And we completed a TMDL, a watershed management plan, source water protection plan, and worked with Jodi and Amy and other folks down here. But anyway, so it's good to have you here. With our Watershed Council, we're working to form local councils, but we'd also like to get information out as to efforts that are in place to support local watershed efforts and to improve conditions on the ground, integrate land and water planning and these kind of things. And so we appreciate the opportunity to hear more about what we have in the works with in water quality, environmental quality. And so Jodi, I'm glad to have you here, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Corey. I really enjoy the opportunity to talk about what we do. We don't get a chance to do that very often, so thank you very much. I manage the watershed protection section for the Division Water Quality, which is part of the Department of Environmental Quality. We have 3 main programs in our section: the Integrated Report, Total Maximum Daily Loads, or TMDLs, and the Nonpoint Source Program. And the section has a catchphrase, impairment to implementation, which I hope you remember after I explain it in a bit. I do want to emphasize, though, this is watershed protection from a water quality perspective, meaning we have rules and regulations that we have to follow. The state was delegated authority to carry out the federal Clean Water Act. So this is encoded in both state and federal rule. And then everything we do usually has to have state and federal approval. So it's a high bar to jump sometimes. Stakeholder participation is required throughout our programs. So many of the longstanding watershed groups that started around the state did so because of a water quality issue. For example, the Provo River Watershed Council started in 1981. I was really surprised. Longstanding council. Another one is East Canyon Creek Committee, started in the 1990s. So. But we don't work in a silo instead, and it's just the opposite, right? We have basin coordinators that work with other agencies and are the water quality representatives. And then we leverage funding whenever possible with DNR's Watershed Restoration Initiative or UDAF's Agricultural Voluntary Incentive Program, which Joel Ferry was very kind and helped us with that program. So watershed protection from a water quality perspective. So let's dive in, and it starts with this goal. This is the goal of the Clean Water Act. It's to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. And we want waters that are both swimmable and fishable, and that's an interim goal of the act. So how do you carry out such a lofty goal? I mean, it's a hard task to do. We do it through this process, and I'm not sure if you can see it, but I'll point to these boxes. But each box has the federal and state code in them, so you can refer to them if you want. The first thing we do is designate beneficial uses. Now, these are not the same as beneficial uses for water rights. It's not a use it or lose it. These are the underpinning of everything we do. They're protection goals. So we have 5 classes. We want we want water safe enough to drink, so that's drinking water, to recreate in, that's recreation. We want aquatic species to survive and thrive, so aquatic life. We want crops with good clean water, and same for our livestock, and so that's that's the agricultural beneficial use. And then Great Salt Lake it's unique and it has its own beneficial use class. And then we set water quality standards to protect those uses. And those water quality standards tell you how long, how often, how much can that pollutant be in the water body and still meet those uses. How much of those pollutants can be in the water body and we can still drink it or recreate in it. And then we monitor. We have an entire section that monitors the state. We target a basin each year, and we have it's subdivided into 6 major basins. So it takes 6 full years to do the state. And then we analyze it and then upload all that data to our database, Aquams. And then that goes to EPA's portal that also has USGS inwards data. So if you ever need water quality data, go to the portal, EPA's portal. Then we pull all that data and we process over 1 million records and we assess it every 2 years. And how we assess it is we compare that data against the standard for every use for every water body. It's a massive endeavor. We do it every 2 years. It takes the whole 2 years to complete. It's well run now, but it is a beast in itself. If the water body is meeting water quality standards for a use, then it's fully supporting, wonderful, right? But if it's not meeting water quality standards, then it's listed on the Clean Water Act Section 303D list of impaired waters. And I'm wondering if you've ever heard that 303D list. That's where it comes from. And it's scheduled for TMDL development. TMDL is total maximum daily load, and it seeks to identify that source of pollutant, whether point or non-point, and then the reductions needed so that that water body can meet that use. They subdivide sources into 2 classes, I guess you could say, point sources and non-point sources. Point sources are direct discharge to a water body, and we regulate those in permits.
Stuff coming out of a pipe, basically.
Stuff coming out of a pipe. Non-point sources are diffuse sources of pollution, and they're mobilized by runoff. And we address those. We do not regulate those. We address them through voluntary incentive grants. And so I'll talk about that program in a second. So impairment to implementation, right? I hope you remember that. And integrated report, TMDL, and non-point source. Those are our programs. So let's dive in. The latest, greatest integrated report was in 2022. We do a 6-year period of record, starting with the water year in 2014 to the end of the water year in 2020. We assess 15,820 miles of stream. We assessed, assessment unit is really a watershed boundary, 774 watersheds, essentially. 1,682 monitoring locations, and we delisted 47. Now, this delisting is really important because this is our measure of success. This means that a water body went from impaired to fully or partially supporting. So that is our measure of success.
Just like your equivalent of recovering an endangered species.
Exactly, exactly. Thanks, Corey. I'm really liking these examples. I'm going to use you in all my presentations. Yeah. Lakes and reservoirs, we assessed 1.5 million acres, but the Great Salt Lake is 1.1 million of those acres. So we did about, here we did 142 lakes or reservoirs. Great Salt Lake is 5 assessment units, so about 135 lakes, something like that. And then we delisted 12. So these are the results. The first 2 categories, there's 5 categories. The first 2 categories, fully supporting and partially supporting, that means that the water body is meeting 1 or more uses and it's good. So 30% of our waters are meeting 1 or more uses, and that's great. Category 3 is insufficient data, meaning we don't have enough data to make an assessment. And we started this, I think, in the 80s, and it just carries over year after year. And so if one site in the middle of nowhere was data was collected, and then we never could get to that site again, then it stays on this list. So that's why our insufficient data category is large. Total TMDLs in place. We have 28 TMDLs that we abide by, and those are sort of lifelong documents. And then finally, category 5, the 303D list of impaired waters, makes about 40% of all the waters we assessed during this period. And then I want to just flip over to something impressive. This is our website. You'll find the report. You'll find all the data that we assessed. You'll find all the public comments. And then, thank you, Todd. Really appreciate it. And we have an interactive map, and this is what I'm about to show you. Yep. So, like I said, here's the report, the data files, our approval letter that we got from EPA, public comment. But here's the interactive map, and you can zoom in on this map. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. It has each category, like I said, category 1 and 2 are sort of fully supporting. Ooh, I'm not good with this. Wait, hold on. There we go. I'm a mouse person. So in green is category 1, fully supporting. Blues, category 2, category 3 and 4A. Category 5 is in red. And if you click on a segment, and I didn't choose this one beforehand, but this is strawberry 4. It's not supporting because of dissolved oxygen. So you can look around the state, look at where your water body that you're interested in, see what the latest, greatest water quality assessment tells you.
Jodi, can I interrupt you? Can you just take a step back and explain what an assessment unit is? And if a water body, I mean, you're not doing for a lake, or excuse me, a river, the whole thing isn't typically listed, right? You do it by an assessment unit?
The assessment unit, like I said, is sort of a watershed boundary that was based off a HUC 10. But then if a road bisected it, it didn't do the whole HUC 10. It would just do to that road crossing. And so I really can't say it's a HUC 10, but it really is. And what we do is we take all the monitoring data and we compare it against the standard to the assessment at the monitoring level. And then we roll it up. And so then you get at the sort of watershed level is what you're getting after we roll it up. And whatever for a particular use and a particular standard, whatever that is after it's rolled up is what the category that is assigned. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's really hard to explain, but it's the roll up. So a lot of long segments of river like the Strawberry River. So this one said Strawberry River 4. There's probably 3 before it and maybe 2 after it. So there's Strawberry 1, Strawberry 2, Strawberry 3. So it won't be the entire Strawberry River. And just for that section. And it's usually because that section was tributary or cut off by a road or something like that. Is that okay? All right, let's go back to the presentation. Oh, wrong one. All right, so if you have an impaired water body, it is scheduled for a TMDL, total maximum daily load. And what that is the calculation of the maximum amount of a pollutant that a water body can receive and still maintain the beneficial use. So that beneficial use goal. And it's really a cap on the loading to a stream, right? We don't want any more of this pollutant because if we go above it, then we're not meeting water quality standards for that use. And so it's a cap on point sources, non-point sources. Margin of safety is uncertainty and reserve growth, which is very important now because we're growing exponentially. So it's going to be very important to incorporate that. So it takes a minimum of 2 years to do a TMDL at a minimum, right? With the data collection, analysis, and reporting. And you saw we have 40% of our assessment units are impaired. So there's just no possible way, and all states were in this spot where you could do a TMDL on every impaired water body. So in 2015, EPA and the rest of the states prioritized our list for TMDL development. And this was really forward thinking and a great thing, because now we could decide what was important to us. What water bodies do we want to restore? And so that period, I forgot to tell you what we decided based on public surveys and internally was pollutants that pose the greatest risk to human health. And that was a worthy goal, and we did all our TMDLs on that. We are done with that period, and now we're going to reprioritize next year. So I really hope I hear from you. But it'll be about 6 months from now when we'll start to get your input. And I want to hear what water quality is important to you, what water bodies are important to you. So the latest, greatest TMDL, it's out for stakeholder review right now, is the Jordan River Watershed-wide E. coli TMDL. E. coli is an indicator of fecal contamination. So we had 14 impaired assessment units. That's most of the east side tributaries, the west side tributaries, and the main stem. And so it's really like 14 TMDLs that we did. It's a beast. And it was different because it was an urban watershed. We usually work in mixed watersheds, like urban, rural, or only rural. And the sources of pollutants are different in an urban watershed than a rural one. And so we took a different approach. We also took a different approach to this one because the Jordan River system is so hydrologically complex. I mean, there's canals going everywhere and diversions. And so we took a concentration-based approach, meaning all sources will need to meet the water quality standard in stream. This is out for stakeholder review. Like I said, it is going to be, we'll initiate rulemaking at the August Water Quality Board meeting, and then it'll go out for official public comment. And we found after our analysis, a way to evidence approach that the source was primarily stormwater. So this will be the first time that we're implementing a TMDL and a stormwater permit. And they're on board. Okay, lastly, non-point source pollution. So non-point source pollution is diffuse, so it's really hard to pinpoint. And it results from land management. And the reason for this is because it's mobilized with runoff. So whatever was on the ground is going to be swept away into our streams. So usually like oil and grease and nutrients, excess nutrients and fertilizer and things like that. Even dog poop, that's how E. coli. So this is, like I said, not regulated. Examples of it are fine sediment from overgrazed rangeland, excessive fertilizer from lawns, stream bank erosion. Paul Burnett is our coordinator, and he gave me this photo. This is post-fire, and in this left-hand corner, there's an ephemeral stream that contributed like tons of sediment to the Strawberry River. And so you could see that there. And then this is a good example of where we have to leverage funding with other grants to do projects because these kind of projects are spendy and enormous. And so we leverage funding with Watershed Restoration Initiative, and we are like a small part of that. We are the water quality part of that. Some examples of projects that we do, we go out and do pasture and riparian fencing, and this is really important in our rangeland because you strategically place fences so that the willows and the grasses can recover and minimize runoff. Off-channel livestock troughs, these are really important to get the cattle off the stream. That's the whole goal of that. Urban floodplain restoration. We have a big project on the Big Bend going on right now, and this is important to communities so they can be resilient to floods, but also create aquatic habitat and riparian species that are healthy for the river. And then stream restoration. Just tomorrow, I just got word last night, they're going to reintroduce beavers to Chalk Creek near Colville. It'll be on the news, I think, on CBS News. And it was because it was a great partnership between private and public, and it was to improve the riparian habitat, but and restore the floodplain, minimize sediment going down the river, and address grazing. So it's just a really successful beaver dam analog, if you've ever heard of a BDA's project. And I just wanted to point this out. Todd, can you help me again? Okay, I have one more website. We give out $2 million in grants every year. And this is our website. We just awarded this year's grants, our Nonpoint source grants. And here's a map of all the projects that we funded. And for example, you can get information on who the proponent was, what time. This is best management practice implementation on the upper green, reservoir aeration. But this is just one of all the projects that we did. So I encourage you to go to this website and see. We have lots of interactive
Are these
maps.
all on the ground projects, or are they also assessments and plans?
No,
Or
this
these are
is
all-
only non-point source projects. Okay, back to the presentation. Let's go here. So like I said, non-point source pollution is not regulated, and it's addressed through these voluntary incentive grants. We give out, like I said, $2 million. $1.5 million goes directly to projects to abate non-point source pollution, employing those best management practices. The other $500,000 goes to local watershed coordinators in partnership with UDAF. Their primary goal is to implement these non-point source projects. And so it's a really good partnership with them. And then we also give a portion of our federal funding to Utah State University for their Water Watch program. And that is a volunteer citizen science monitoring program for water quality. And then they also do education outreach. So we're maximizing our dollars wherever possible. This is how we're set up. So our local watershed coordinators are on the right of the screen here. And again, they're housed in UDAF, but it's a sort of partnership with UDAF that we have overseeing them. And then in our section, we have basin coordinators, and they are experts in their basin. And Corey, you were what on this UDAF?
Still kind of hiding behind the
Right.
scenes there.
Okay, finally, if that's not enough to have in one section, those three main programs, we have the beast of the program, the Utah Lake Water Quality Study. This is actually a different study. It's to develop criteria or water quality standards for the lake. And the reason being, Utah Lake is the fourth largest natural freshwater lake in the Western U.S. It's highly recreated. It has problems with excessive nutrients. And the reason why we know that is it has large seasonal algal blooms, elevated pH, and then sometimes cyanotoxin production. And what that means is sometimes cyanobacteria produce toxins that can make you really sick if you recreate in it. And another word for it is a harmful algal bloom, if you've ever heard that. So because of that, in 2015, we had set out the goal to develop water quality standards, nutrients, and nitrogen and phosphorus to protect the uses. We sat a 16-member steering committee. It's a stakeholder-led steering committee who is informed by a 10-member independent science panel. And so 2015, it's been a while. We've been working really hard. We've done a lot of research investigations with universities. We have a technical team that supports the science panel and puts out the work products. We're water quality modeling now, and we should have criteria by the end of next summer. Okay, so this is the staff. I love my job. I work with incredible staff. And as you can see, they wear many hats. And so if you ever need to contact anybody, you can refer this slide, but please contact me and I'll put you in the right direction. I put their name at the top and then what they do underneath it. All right, that's it for the Division Water Quality Watershed Protection section.
Does everybody remember what TMDL stands for?
Okay, good. And then what is impairment implementation? That's my catchphrase. All right, any questions?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'm very grateful for Jodi's presentation because I'd always taught that TMDL stood for too many damned lawyers.
Oh,
That's a fact too.
I'm trying to change that paradigm, Warren. But thank you for that. I appreciate that.
So I guess a question for Jodi is one of our challenges that we've been tasked to do is to establish local watershed councils.
Yes.
You're out on the ground, your people out on the ground. We already have existing efforts assessing waters, right? People doing volunteer sampling, monitoring, establishing TMDLs, and then taking steps to achieve the TMDLs with your grants and these efforts. What can we do to coordinate with your efforts to achieve our goals?
Oh, that is a big question, Corey. Yeah.
Dan's the man that kind of is helping us out along with staff from Water Resources.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Dan contacted us a long time ago and he's met with all of our coordinators. So I really appreciate that because they do know the history, right? They've been in the basin, they're the basin coordinators. And there are some groups like the Prevost River Watershed Council, East Canyon Creek Committee, the Weaver River Partnership, these, long established groups. And they might have started with water quality, but they've broadened, right? And so there had to be some synergy between the councils that you're creating and these long-standing groups. And I've heard some really interesting ideas, like the Weaver River Partnership suggested a subcommittee of the partnership that would become the Weaver River Council, which that is a fantastic idea. Or having the council be part of the Prevost River Watershed Council is made up of the interested entities, having them be part of that council or something, some way of bringing them in and making sure that they're heard and that the issues that they're facing, they can bring it to the council or the council brings it to them. Some process of communication between them.
Certainly, we're going to have conditions where we have different scales that we're working on, with our councils versus what are on the ground. But
right.
If there's good things happening, we want to take advantage of that and maximize that and not reinvent the proverbial wheel, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is great. I think the state council, Watershed Council, bringing in different people, like sometimes with the water quality issue, you get a certain group of people, maybe broadening that so that you get more entities involved.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Jodi? All right.
Thank you so much, Corey. It's really nice to see you again. Yeah.
Corey, one question. When we receive excellent information, such as Jodi's just provided us, do we have access to her presentation slides through the Watershed Council records, or how should we do that?
Can you provide that to Todd?
Yeah. Okay.
Can you email that out to the committee? Okay, Todd will email that out to the committee.
All right, thank you.
Council. Yep, thank you. All right, next we have the Norm and Bronson show. Is that what we're doing today?
That's what we're doing today.
Okay, So once again, this is kind of another reunion for me. I worked with Norman Bronson a lot back in 2005. We had a big disaster down in our neck of the woods on the Virgin River. I think it was January 11th, 12th, 13th of 2005, where we had a huge snowpack and then protracted rains. And on the Santa Clara in particular, we had the devastating floods. There were about 12.5 homes which weren't just flooded, but they were physically washed away. There are places on the Santa Clara where the river went from being, 100 feet wide to 1,500 feet wide with the natural avulsions, with that meandering that took place, and lots of other issues and problems. But anyway, these guys were incredible to come to town, and we've had great partnerships and cooperation. And anyway, we appreciate Bronson and Norm, but come and present a little bit about the programs and grants that they have. And I guess I think that there's a lot of good things going on out there, and we need to make everybody aware of that and do our best to take advantage of it. And these guys are incredible at leveraging funds and working with people, and a lot we can learn from here.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Corey, for inviting us, and thank you for everyone for joining. I'm Bronson Smart, State Conservation Engineer for NRCS, and I've been out in the field in Stockton on the fire today, so if I stink like a fire and I'm not super dressed up, I apologize for that, but it's what needed to happen this morning. To talk about our watershed programs, so we have our Farm Bill programs that individual landowners can come into the NRCS and receive assistance, and we manage that on a person-by-person basis. But our watershed programs operate a little differently, where they require an entity of government to sponsor their project. And so, as Corey had mentioned, the floods in St. George in prior years, and over the last 15 years or so, we're up around $350 million or so invested in Utah through our emergency watershed program, following fires and other floods and natural disasters. And you can see on our active projects, we're around 65 million right now. We've had a few really good years or really bad years, depending on how you look at it. So these projects, again, happen after floods and fires, mostly in Utah. But they're to rehabilitate the landscape and prevent, issues like this from happening. Like, for example, what we were looking at on the fire out in Stockton today, where their water system and pipelines are at risk that provide water to the community, and homes at risk from things happening like this. This is on the Bear Canyon fire, just above Press. Yeah.
Bear assessment, what was that on the right hand side? What's that?
Oh, burned area. Yeah. That's a picture of Norm running away in Yellowstone. Yeah. Both trying to get out of there. This is a picture just about Price last year. One of the wildfires that we had, and this individual just built this home, and gosh, not a week after the fire, we had huge flood come through, and this is a brand new home. It's totally damaged, and these floods and fires impact a lot of people's lives. NRCS pays 75%, and the local communities pay 25%. We've been fortunate to have DNR as an active sponsor and helping a lot of these with offsetting with some of the seed costs and things that the state does to help communities recover. Then we can count that towards the share of our programs. Another part of our watershed programs that we're not going to mention or talk about today is our dam rehabilitation program. We've rehabilitated 21 dams across the state, and largely in part due to, again, Department of Natural Resources has been a great partner there, providing the cost share for a lot of those dam rehabilitation projects that we're able to take some advantage of some federal funds in years where other states couldn't take them because Utah was stepping up to the plate and the state was helping partner with our federal programs to help. And so that's why we built our watershed programs kind of around these two programs, with our emergency watershed programs and our dam rehabilitation programs. About 10 years ago, go ahead, Joel.
Let me just ask a quick question. I don't mean to interrupt you, but while we're on the emergency side of things, you talk about kind of the rehabilitation side. So that'd be the back end after a flood has occurred. But like, we have an active situation where we've got fires in Stockton. You were just there, you said, and then up above Fillmore, we anticipate that there will be flooding. There's some work that needs to be done. Is that something that you could help participate in now?
Yeah, certainly.
If-
Our guys were at a meeting yesterday down in Fillmore. And
So preventative measures, not cleanup. I mean, I'm talking upfront stuff so that we don't have such damage occur. We can kind of prevent some of these things to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And so like I said, we've been really good at these other projects for years, responding to the disaster or rehabilitating dams that we already built. But Congress added funding again to our watershed programs, and that's the preventative program, just like you're talking, Director.
So if we had some people reach out to you now on this, you'd be responsible. Okay.
So
thank you.
Norm's going to talk about the watershed program and how many projects we have going on around the state that are in that preventative, before the disaster program. So
just to add to that, one thing that I observe, it seems like there's a cycle out there, and you have this cycle that involves oftentimes invasive species. You have cheatgrass, you have these other upland species, or you have natural succession that isn't taking place properly. And then you have the fire, and then you have the flood, and then you have the invasive species coming in, and you have the fire and the flood, this cycle. And it's really hard to break that cycle sometimes. And so if there's an opportunity for some preventive action, through different programs, that's really helpful. Or, then there's the restorative efforts. But anyway, I think there's different resources to target different parts of that cycle. And we need to better understand that to target what we can do there. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. And we've seen that with our programs and saw that there was that whole, luckily Congress did kind of put our watershed program back in place instead of just having the respond to the disasters. And we have that preventative program back again. And Norm will talk a lot about the projects that are funded under that.
Okay. I guess we'll switch gears a little bit here, but just on the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, it's one of those programs, it's funded through soft money through Congress. And so that means that we don't get those funds every year automatically. But we've been going steady since 2005. Every year, it seems like we have a whole host of projects that pop up here in Utah, and it's been steady since 2005. And every year we think that we're going to have a little bit of a reprieve so that we can focus on our other programs, but these fires just keep coming. So just switching gears to this other program, it's a watershed program that's been with the agency since the late 40s, early 50s, when it was authorized through Congress. And it's called the Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Program. And so it was authorized under the Act, Public Law 566. So you might hear a number of us, after the meeting, talk about PL 566. That's kind of typically what we go by as far as administering the program. And so with this program, we need a sponsor. So we need a city entity, county entity, water conservancy district, a sponsor like that we can run the funds through. So that's one of the first things that we have to identify as an agency, to be able to move forward with the project. And so the sponsors carry the project out. It's not an NRCS project. So we work hand in hand, with an applicant or a group of partners that are part of the project. And then NRCS, in turn, we carry out the technical and the financial end of the program. So we pay for 100% of all of the technical services. So all the engineering, all the investigation work, the inventory work, NRCS pays for all that work. And then depending on what's proposed or implemented, then it's based on the program authorities as to what that cost share is for that particular practice that we want to do. So as far as some of the background in the program, we have over 2,000 watershed projects around the country that have been going with this project or this program, and then almost 12,000 dams that were built under the program since the early 50s. And most of them are flood control type of structures to help, protect communities, cropland, and those types of areas. And so you think about that number, there's about 2 dams being built every day from 1960 through the 70s. So that was a lot of work that was done Granted, it was pre-NEPA, so it's a little bit different today that in what we have to go through to be able to get one of these projects on the ground. And so one of the first steps that going back to the sponsor group, they have to really apply for assistance through NRCS. They have to identify what are the resource concerns, where are they, how much are they, where's the location, and kind of the landscape and the setting. And then NRCS looks at those applications to see, does it fit the program? Is there support for work within the watershed? Because we don't want to invest in work where it maybe will get stalled along the way. And so that's one thing that we want to look at as far as potential for controversy. Just aspects like that we really want to be able to identify ahead of time, rather than getting halfway down a project and then all of a sudden it doesn't have the support and it dies. So one of those things that we look at too is the benefit and the costs of that. So what are the general benefits that we could see that would come out from a project? And then if all those things fall in line, then we'll submit for funding for this preliminary investigation report, then that we put and do the homework and put it together into a report for our state conservationists to make a decision if we move forward with planning. So I know this is a bit of an eye chart, but these are all of our active projects that we have going right now. These are all EAs and EISs around the state, and all of these really were initiated from 2017 until now. So all of these projects have been funded since that fiscal year. And so we're in various stages of planning and design. We have a couple that are under construction right now. And those are the three columns there. We have the first phase is for planning, and then the middle phase there's design, and then the end column there is for construction. And so all of these costs are going up by the week, really, as far as what these plans are costing to get through, and then to get through final design, and then get to construction. So you can kind of see that list there, what we're working with, and this just gives you the spatial outlook as far as across the state where these projects are being undertaken. And you can kind of see in the southwest part of the state we're a little bit thin, and so that's one of the things that the agency will be looking at as far as Utah here and prioritizing our PIPers or new plans. That's one thing we'll look at to see if we can get more projects in that southeast part of the state. You can see most of them are kind of built on the backbone of the Wasatch there for the most part. But we really want to get some more projects in the southeast. And right now we're working with the Department of Environmental Quality of Utah here to sponsor a project on the San Juan River watershed. And right now we have indication that that's going to move forward. And so we'll be putting an application for funding for a PIFR on that one. And that'll involve 4 states, so the Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado. Hopefully, we'd all be involved with that project moving forward. I mentioned the cost share part. Everybody wants to usually know, okay, what is the cost share for these different project measures that if they're proposed. Flood prevention there, that's kind of the flagship purpose that Congress initially started the program with. So that's 100%. So we pay for everything. So as you can imagine, that's pretty popular with county entities and the city entities that have flooding issues out there across the country. Watershed protection, typically that's about 75% is what we would pay for practices there that would be installed. And then wildlife and public recreation, 50%. So a lot of people are surprised that NRCS gets involved with recreation type of projects, but we can do that. And we do have a few projects that have trails involved with the plan. And then the other, I guess the big one to mention here is ag water management. So that's anything working with canal systems, piping, and we have a number of projects now that are underway with converting canals to a pipe system around the state. And so that's one of our big workloads right now. And you can see some of the other purposes there. I just wanted to mention the public input. So all of these projects, it's a public process. So we have to have a scoping meeting at the beginning to identify any resource concerns from the community or an area that are brought up that we don't know about or didn't necessarily know about. So we have that at the beginning. That kind of helps inform our planning process with the community or in that watershed. And then we have another public process at the end to present our findings, our results of the inventories, and then proceed through to a final plan that way. So just stepping through a couple of projects here. This is Cove Reservoir. This is a proposed dam that's down just right outside of Orderville. That's in Corey's area. And actually, Washington County Conservancy District is one of the sponsors here for this dam. And we're looking at about 6,000 plus acre feet that is proposed for storage. And so this is a brand new dam. And you can imagine new dams aren't that popular these days. And so we started out with this project with an EA and got all the way through a draft. And then with the public comment, then we really had to go into an EIS format for that plan. So we're in the middle of that right now for this project. And this kind of just shows you the landscape there where the dam is proposed and the setting.
How long was anticipated for the NEPA process?
Good question. Yeah, there's a question about how long it typically takes for the NEPA process. And for an EA, our national headquarters really wants us to get through an EA in a year, but we haven't gotten there yet. So really it's 2 years and probably 3. And an EIS is about 3 years is what we're really going by. But we are trying to shrink that time frame down to that 2 years. And then it depends on the project. It depends on, if there is controversy and how many measures are proposed and that sort of thing. So here's another one, Spanish Fork Watershed. So this one was kind of born out of the fires there a few years ago. And then there were some debris basins that were identified to help protect communities. And our national headquarters is kind of moving away from us building dams or debris basins with the EWP program. They would much rather see it under this broader planning instrument with the Watershed program. And so that's what we have here with a few structures being proposed there for that project. And here's another example is in Lower Price River. This is an environmental assessment there where we're looking to improve the canal systems, delivery systems there, and then install a new dam right below the old dam there with Olson Reservoir. So we're essentially going to be improving the wildlife habitat there with Olson Reservoir, and then of course improving the canal systems. And then we are doing some access road improvements there to help with better access to the reservoir and some of those recreation components that reservoir will provide. And so we're getting toward the end of the EA on that one also. Santa Quin City, this one also was kind of born out of a fire back a number of years ago where there was a debris flow that impacted a number of houses there in Santa Quin. And so we have 5 debris basins that are proposed in on the East Bench there of Santa Quin to help protect that community. And those are right now, they're under design. We've made it through the EA, has been finalized and authorized by our chief. And so we're underway with the final design on those structures now. Pleasant Creek Watershed. So this is out by Mount Pleasant there. This is one of our older watersheds. These structures were built in the mid 50s. And so we're looking to help restore those 2 debris basins there. And then the upper debris basin, we're looking at converting that debris basin into a storage reservoir with a number of acre feet there to help provide ag water or secondary water into Mount Pleasant. And so that's going to be metered and monitored. And so we're almost to the final EA with that one also. And it's just another shot of Pleasant Creek. Another one is the Cottonwood Creek Watershed, and that's the Joes Valley Reservoir for location's sake there, and that's one we're looking at. That also brought a lot of interest with some past fires there in that watershed. So the community approached us to see if there's something that could be done to help with that sediment delivery into Joes Valley Reservoir, because they're concerned for their water supply and their drinking water supply, and all those aspects of having a large reservoir like that. So anyway, that kind of gives you the breadth of and the type of projects that we can work with. With this program, it's pretty broad, and it has a lot of authority, so we can get involved with a variety of different projects. So with that, I guess we'll open it up for questions.
For Bronson or Norm? So I guess the question, we still have Jodi. How many of these projects do you guys have on the works where there are follow-up to where there's a TMDL on the ground, or watershed groups they've been working with where there's a DQ assessment that's taking place that you're then following up to do things on the ground, or is that happening?
Yeah, we have one that's in this the Upper Sevier, it's around the Panguitch area, where there was a lot of work that had been done previously by the state agencies, a variety of agencies there. So there was a lot of information that we already had available that to help inform the PIFR, that preliminary report. So we already had a lot of the information that was identified as far as the resource concerns. What's the partnership? What is the area? And so from there, we could just kind of launch off and kind of identify, okay, this fits with PL 566, and be able to write that. And so we're just finalizing that report right now. So
I think it's helped, a lot of the watershed coordinators that Jodi was talking about are located in our NRCS offices through an agreement with UDAF. And so we have that coordination, and we're located in the same offices together. And so, projects that benefit water quality definitely are on the list of 43 projects and $622 million that we plan on, implementing over the next 10 years.
Can you touch just a little bit more on, you mentioned this PL 566 is soft money, so it's not like this grant amount, but so you have to go through various stages and basically congressional authorization, right? To first authorize the project and then authorize engineering and environmental work, and then you have to have authorization for construction. Is that kind of the way all that works?
Yeah, that's the progression, where we go from that preliminary report, and then from that preliminary report, then a decision is made. Okay, do we have enough information here to move forward with planning? And then we would submit a request for a plan, EA or an EIS. And then once that is completed and authorized, then we put in another request for the final design for the measures that are identified in that plan. And then once that final design is done, and then we go after construction. So it's really 3 phases.
And it's 100% covered up to what point? Or is that the way it's structured? I mean,
yeah, all the technical aspects, like all the engineering work, all the investigation work, geotechnical, the hydrological work, all the economics work is all paid for by NRCS. And then the only time it gets to the cost share really is the implementation, the installation part. So if you're building a dam that is only for flood control, flood damage reduction, then the cost share, that's all 100% for installing that dam. But if it's for ag water management, so for irrigation purposes, then we pay for 75% of that installation.
Good. Well, it's an impressive spreadsheet you presented there. You're doing a lot of great things. Anything else for these guys? All right. Thanks for being here. Appreciate all your efforts. All right. Next, let's go to Dan and company. And we've asked Dan to present every meeting and give us an update on his efforts and work on the ground with coordinating and our efforts to create, form, certify local councils. Appreciate you, Dan.
You betcha. Not crash Todd's computer here. Yeah, I plugged the thumb drive in. Okay.
The PowerPoint?
Yeah, there it is.
There you go.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks, Todd. Okay, is this on? All right. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I'm really glad to not be facilitating. I'm glad you're doing all
you're
this.
still the facilitator.
Okay, well, this should be pretty simple. I'm just going to walk through and give a quick update on where we're at with the local watershed councils forming. And so just real quick as an overview, this is kind of a common question we're getting asked by a lot of folks is, what are the seats that are on the local watershed councils? As you all know, these are the 11. Some of the comments we have been getting back from folks is about adding, other seats, and we've been communicating that it's relatively fluid. And if there's other seats they'd like to add, they sure can. And so those have been good conversations. I'll go ahead and skip over this one. Just in our timeline, as been mentioned, that we're trying to have 2 to 3 councils up and running this year. So that's kind of where we're at in our timeline, the process, that February, December 2022 part. And then I shared this at the last meeting we had, that kind of the short list of potential local watershed councils that we're focusing on right now are the Bear, the Jordan, the Weber, and then the Uinta as well. But primarily the Bear, the Jordan, the Weaver are the 3 that we're really the most focused on right now. And so there's been a lot of activity. This is just kind of a snapshot of some of the meetings we've been having. And this doesn't include all the one-on-one phone calls I've been having with a lot of folks as well that call and have questions. But the Bear River folks have been really engaged. The Bear River Commission, we've met with them several times. Ann Neville has been really helpful and shared a lot of other planning studies, and helped us kind of expand the pie of a lot of the existing collaborative effort. We had on the Weber River, we've been meeting with the Weber River Partnership, and just this week, yesterday, had a good visit with their board as well, which was really helpful. And then the Jordan River, Soren's here, and we've been coordinating with Soren quite a bit, and he's been great to work with. And then we've also, as has been talked about with Jodi's group, Christine Osborne has been really great to work with in Uinta Basin. She's been doing a lot of good work there and has been keeping us in the loop. On the other list, I also met with the BLM state office. And that was a really productive, good conversation with them. They really would like to participate and would like to be involved in the local watershed councils. Something we've talked about a little bit in the past is that the local or the statewide, this council right here today, it doesn't have, there's not federal agencies that are on it. And there also are not any specific tribes. We have Dustin with Division of Indian Affairs representing, but the pathway for the federal agencies and the specific tribes is through the local councils. And so that's been really good, having like visits with the BLM state office and seeing their willingness and desire to participate. John Sauter, this was something we've also talked a little bit about at the last meeting. He is at Oregon State University and was the head of one of the first watershed councils in Oregon. And he's about to retire. So he made a presentation about the 25 years he's been involved in watershed councils. And that presentation, how do we have that up now? Are we close? All right, we're getting close to having that up on the website, but there is a link. If any of you would like to watch it, I can definitely get you the link, but really helpful perspective on life cycle watershed councils. We've also been, as was mentioned with Jodi and her group and her specialists around the state,
we've also been having, I've been involving the Division of Water Resources area planning specialists more, and especially in those ones that are on our short list. And that has been super helpful. And they've been really good participants and willing to participate. And the local folks we're meeting with really like knowing that there's maybe from staff from Water Resources that's involved. That's been a really positive, good thing. And then also coordinating with the Colorado River Authority and then the Water Optimization Task Force, we presented with them as well. So what are we kind of hearing from folks? The Bear River, a number of the stakeholders we met with have said, slow down, don't cram this thing down our throat. And so what's really, I think, positive in that is that while people are saying slow down, they're also saying, hey, let's keep talking, let's keep the dialogue rolling. So a lot of good conversations. And the kind of the thought of a lot of those stakeholders has been to look more at fall than summer of this year to convene. They also just how much work has already been done and how many existing organizations are already up in the Bear. Also, just I've been meeting with folks that are involved in the tri-state efforts there too, and that's been very helpful to understand all that great work that's been done. On the Weber River Partnership, their latest thought as of yesterday with their board is to have the Weber River Watershed Council be a standing committee that's part of the Weber River Partnership. So that's kind of a thought there. Rachel's on the call with me as well yesterday, and we shared that. Well, that's the Weber River Partnership's position, but we also need to engage everybody else in the watershed and get their thoughts and ideas as well. So one thought is about the January. It looks like they have set a date in January now for their symposium. That might be a good time to just invite anybody that wants to come and talk about watershed councils and kind of do it all at one shot there. So
just a comment.
Yeah.
So
please.
Yeah, my view of that is it ought to be opposite. The partnership, because the partnership is really monochromatic. It's really aimed at a fishery, period. And so the other water community is not as involved because it's not down there. Anyway, interest, yeah. But it's definitely got a place. But I think it should be under the Watershed Council, the partnership. So anyway,
gotcha. Good. Okay, so and then I think with actually with all three, they're kind of this idea. That's why I showed the slide of the 11 seats. There are a lot of those are already met with these three potential watershed councils where they have a lot of those seats represented, and all three have been the stakeholders we've met with are really open to, hey, if we need to add other seats or find other people to add to that to meet that intent, they're really supportive of that.
Ricky has raised a hand and
Okay.
has a question or comment.
Sure. Yeah, Ricky.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but just to go back to the slowdown point, can you share a little bit more detail as to what concerns you think need to be addressed a little bit more, or what's driving that slowdown response?
Yeah, I think part of it's really interesting. That's a great question. And what's really interesting is it kind of goes back to the intent of forming the watershed councils, which
just to better understand what's going on.
Yeah, because there's a lot of groups that are saying, hey, we've already been meeting here for years. We do a ton of great work. Water quality has been involved in a lot of those for years. And so, and it's kind of funny because, the Watershed Council Act came to be in 2020. And then this year in 2022, I've had people say, who the heck are you again? And why are you here? And what is this thing you're saying that came from 2020? Which again, kind of goes to the intent of the act is to improve that communication coordination, kind of like what Scott's saying. If with the Weber River, the council be that, should it flip? So the council, which is broad and, very inclusive, should that be the lead? So I think the slowdown part is just a matter of, hey, let us all kind of get to ask questions and be involved. And I'm going to actually throw an idea out here in a second of something I'm working on. Ricky, I think kind of is a way of addressing it and helps answer that question.
So I'll come back to your question. The Jordan River, also just their thought there is the commission becoming certified as the Watershed Council. And so maybe a little bit different from the Weber River Partnership that way. But this idea of an existing organization that already has staff and resources and so forth, but they would become part of that, become certified as the council itself. So, okay.
Dan, it looks like Warren Peterson has raised his hand.
Okay, Warren, can I get through this slide and then come back to you?
Let me give that some thought, Dan.
Okay, while you're thinking about it, I'll go ahead and go forward with this one. So one of the things, and this, Ricky, this kind of goes to your question, as I've been thinking about it and thinking about all the different questions I get asked by folks, I think part of it is people wonder, what is the real intent of watershed councils? What's the value of them? Is it just another meeting? All those kinds of things. But I think also it would be helpful if people could wrap their arms around, what does that first year look like? And so I am in the process, and I hope to have it done by today, but it didn't happen. But there's Langdon Group does a lot of work with helping collaboratives get up and get formed. And there's some really just kind of key attributes of successful collaboratives. And one of them is that they don't jump to problem solving out of the gate, that instead they work on shared understanding of the resource. So in this case of that watershed, they work on building relationships and get to know each other. They identify what are those different needs by getting out on the ground together. And then they create that list of things that they feel like need to be addressed. And then they prioritize that list, and then they go for it and address and tackling that list. And so I think if we can help these watershed councils kind of have a vision of what that first year looks like and what it looks like after that, I think it'll be a way to help people not feel like just slow down so much. Instead, those kind of, it'd be easier to envision how they and their constituency can fit in with that resource and process. So that's an idea that well, I'd like to bring to the next watershed this meeting is, and we can go through that process and talk about it. So anyways, does that, okay, Warren, have you thought, got any, you want to go now? Do you need a moment?
Yeah, Dan, I decided to wait and let you finish that slide. So we're on the same page. We're good. Now,
yep.
And if you, Dan, if you feel like you need to go a little further, I mean, if this is your last slide, let's talk. If not, let's let you get to the end of your.
Oh, yep. It's my last slide.
Well, let's go back to it then, would you please?
All right.
Mr. Sheriff, if I may, I'm looking ahead at, trying to think ahead on the very things that Dan's talking about. And Dan, I'm just going to take your first bullet point there, which is draft the year one onboarding process and schedule so that a new watershed council, a local watershed council, knows what to anticipate. And we, as the State Watersheds Council, we're charged under Section 305 and 306 of the Act to certify these councils, and we're given some criteria there. But we really haven't invented our process to do that. And for heaven's sakes, we haven't really put together documents for what a document look like, what a guidance document might look like. As these local councils say, all right, help us put our documents, our charter documents together. We've got to be very careful because we want to strike that balance between giving structure, but not, I think the thing you said before was not cramming it down their throats. So that's going to take some considerable, I would suggest, some considerable thought on the part of this statewide council. So with that in mind, well, the other thing I wanted to mention is that we're also charged under the Act, the State Council is to give an annual report to the Natural Resources, Ag and Environment Interim Committee. And their last meeting will likely be November. Also to the Legislative Water Development Commission, they also meet during the interim typically rather than during the session, and the Utah Water Task Force. And I hear that the gatekeeper now with the Utah Water Task Force, Mr. Joel Ferry is going to be tough in that gatekeeper. So we better get things ready. So to bring all this to the point, Mr. Chair, I move that we set up a committee under our policy, set up a committee of this council to work with Dan to work on some of these, to get ready some of these things for setting up local councils and guiding them through the process, including the onboarding process that Dan has recommended. So so that we push this forward, Corey, that's my motion, is that we create a committee of this council. I would suggest maybe 5 members, and also aided by the division staff and Dan. If that motion's in order, I'll place it with you.
Let me just ask you just a little bit more. So, I mean, you've shown a little bit about some experiences on the ground, and we're seeing that every watershed is different, right? Mm-hmm. Different history, different experience, different structure, different challenges. And so I think we're going to see that we're going to have some flexibility, mm-hmm. but also some structure. Mm-hmm. And so one of the biggest questions, I think is where you're going, is certification. What does that mean, right? Mm-hmm. Is really what it comes down to. Are we tasked to certify these local councils, get them certified, and then bring them to this table and then move forward? So your motion is to establish a group and really kind of explore and come back with recommendations for what does certification look like, and what are we expecting? Is that what we're saying, Warren?
Yes, and thank you for phrasing it so well. That's exactly what I'm suggesting, is that group would then come back to the full committee here with recommendations.
Okay. One thought maybe too is I think I know of at least one local watershed council that is kind of looking at that October, our next meeting in October, to come with their idea about being certified. So probably getting to work on this sooner than later would be helpful for those that, especially as a couple of these are kind of close to getting organized. So I think that also this would be super helpful for that kind of 1-year vision plan as well. I think those would go hand in hand.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chair, with that in mind, perhaps the motion should include and reporting back to the full council here in the October meeting.
Yeah. Okay. So the motion is to include some members of our statewide council to work on a committee or a task force, whatever we want to call it, along with Dan and members of his group, and also staff, to come back with recommendations. Is that where we're at?
Yes, precisely. That's it.
How many people do we think we need to work on this to make that happen? What's appropriate?
I think so. We do have an area planning specialist from the Bear and the Weber that are both being involved. So if I don't know if you want to go to that level of staff, Todd, you can virtually kick me under the table here. but I don't know what level you'd want to go to.
That'd be fine. This being a recommendation for certification of the statewide council, maybe myself or Rachel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mr. Chair, one thought on the size of it is that we want to stay below the threshold. We want less than a quorum on this committee, so that we're not dealing with Open Public Meetings Act issues.
Any other thoughts from the council?
Chairman Cram, I know Ricky's had her hand raised before Warren did his motion, so I don't know if that can probably wait. Yeah, that's looks like she just lowered it, so that's
okay. Warren, did you initially suggest a number from the council?
I didn't. My thoughts were some around 5 might be a good number. Maybe that's too much resource, but I wanted to leave room, frankly, for the chair and the co-chair to participate as they see fit.
Or to assign other people to participate.
Yeah. All right. Let me pause and catch that boomerang.
Yeah.
But Warren, I would second that motion. I think it's something important that we need to move forward on if we're going to get the local watershed councils formulated and going. We've got to come up with a process for sure. So I'd second that.
Okay. Do we want to define this a little bit further before we move on to a second? Just put some numbers. So we've got Dan and his group, Todd and his group committed. Can we, Shelley, go ahead.
I'm just volunteering to commit, and I would like to better understand. Of course, I'd like Jodi to be participating as well. I assume that would be part of the staff support. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Great.
Could we be smaller rather than larger with this group and see what resources are necessary to make this thing happen, to come back with a recommendation? What about 3 from the council plus staff resources? Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, I think that makes
Is
sense.
that fair? You okay with that, Warren?
Yes, and just to be clear, I wouldn't dare make such a motion without at least being available to participate in the committee.
Awesome. We were going to kind of go in that direction. Thank you, Warren. Can we go back to you, Scott, for a second on that?
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Oh, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, or any other further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so just to tie this down, so we got Warren and then Kim and your staff, is that okay? And we've already got Dan and Todd. Is there anybody else from the council who would like to participate on that?
Seeing that the Weaver River is probably one of the first ones, I would volunteer to be on that.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So is that our 3? Kim, Warren, and Scott, is that all right?
Sounds good.
Okay, let's move forward.
Would you like me to go ahead and schedule a meeting then of this group?
Great.
Okay, we'll get right on it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Warren. Appreciate the suggestion and the support there.
You're welcome. Since the vice chair wound up on this committee, would he be the appropriate person to head the committee?
I'm not sure. Be glad to.
That sounds great. We'll have him head that, and Dan will help you with scheduling.
Great. That sounds good.
All right. So we'll follow up with our next meeting to talk about an update on formation and recommendations from this group on what certification means. We have an opportunity just for informal comments from people attending, from our audience. If there's anybody who would like to share your thoughts, give us perspective. Yes, please.
I'd like to make a comment.
Please give us your name again.
My name is Eric McCulley.
Thank you,
with
Eric.
the Mitigation Commission.
You come up
Do
to
you
the
wanna-
microphone, those online will hear you better. Thank you.
Thanks. Eric McCulley with the
Okay.
Mitigation Commission.
Push that button.
All right.
Third time's a charm.
I'm on.
One more time. No, your name.
Eric McCulley, the Mitigation Commission. And I'd just like to make a, comment about the Jordan River. I've been working on the Jordan River for 28 years. I'm not from here. And over that time, it started with just some people going out saying, oh, there's some issues here. And then we were like, oh, okay, let's solve some issues together. And then a blueprint was developed. And then the Jordan River Commission was developed. And I think, over the last 20 years, there's been so much work done as far as process and getting these groups set up. And while there's a lot to do on the Jordan River, I think it's just a great place to work through this. As was mentioned, a lot of the entities are already represented. There's a lot of people already at the table. There's significant, capacity that's already been developed. So I just wanted to give a plug for Soren and his group. I'm also the just past chair of the Technical Advisory Committee. And so for the last 2 years before January, I was the chair. Marion Rice with Salt Lake City is now the 2B chair, and Chris Klein with Fish and Wildlife Service. Marion signed up for a 6-year commitment. So you probably have a person helping on the technical side. So I just wanted to mention pretty far along. And as far as a testing ground for getting people to work together in a highly contentious area that has issues with water and all these different things, the Jordan River Commission, I think, is a good entity to work with. I also worked on some of the other ones, and I have some comments about that as well. But I think just working through the details with Soren and the commission is a good idea.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for the comment. Ricky, do we have another hand raising there?
I did. I did not want to interfere in the discussion that Warren had raised, but just one other question back to Dan. You had originally had the Uinta Basin group on the list, but then with the groups that you suggested we focus on for proceeding, they were not on the list. Just a little curious about why, if they just need more time to kind of form together with all the stakeholders, or what the differentiator there was.
Ricky's out in the basin as we speak, ready to go.
I'm happy
Ricky,
to
the
rattle
other,
pages.
I think, so we had, there was this, and there was also the Sevier River. And I felt like, and not just me, but in us, visiting about this, that the Sevier and the Uinta both are also really good candidates. And I think when this process, which today has been so helpful about thinking about what is the certification process and what does that first year or so look like, I think it's going to be really quite easy for a lot of the other watershed councils, the locals, to come together after we get that process going. So I think it was just a matter of scalability. That's probably all I'd add to that. And also, like I mentioned earlier, Christine Osborne is doing a fantastic job in the basin, bringing folks together. That's just getting better and better as they go along. And so, Christine and I seem like we're on a lot of calls together, and I think that'll all work pretty good once we get to that point. So, but I don't know, is that an ambiguous enough answer for?
No, I appreciate the explanation. Thank you.
You bet. And I can visit with you more offline if you want.
Any other comments? Yeah, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Soren Simonson, Executive Director of the Jordan River Commission, and we have so enjoyed meeting with Todd Stoneley and Dan Adams a number of times over the course of the last year, and with Representative Tim Hawks, who sponsored the legislation several times, who's met with our board, and we're just excited to see this process coming to fruition that was envisioned when the legislature first started talking about it maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I know there's many hands and hearts and voices that have helped get to this point. As in my recent conversation with Dan, which he talked about, we talked about maybe an October timeframe for trying to present the commission. We're not bound to that, and if you need that time in October to think through the process, we're organized and ready to move forward, but we don't have a set time frame to do that. And if there's more time needed to think about your processes, I just want to make sure that's very clear. But as Eric alluded to in his comments, there are a lot of issues, and as we've watched over the last year, particularly with all of the conversations, Representative Ferry and so many of his colleagues at the legislature talking about what's happening with the Great Salt Lake, you can look at the Jordan River and understand exactly why the Great Salt Lake is the way that it is, because those issues start in the watershed to the Great Salt Lake. And Jodi, talked about the complex network of all of the water resources that are diverted from and tributaries to the Jordan River. And it is a complex system. And this process has really got our organization thinking about water issues and the river beyond just the narrow corridor of the Jordan River in ways that have been really meaningful and beneficial to us. We just adopted in April, our board adopted an update to the Blueprint Jordan River, and the river becomes a much more central part. It's not just a place to recreate, but it is the lifeblood of an entire region and all kinds of environmental and economic elements of the Great Salt Lake as well. And so the opportunity for us to become part of a Great Salt Lake Council and think about those issues and the systems very holistically have been really important and guided our organization in some really meaningful ways over the last couple of years of dialogue. So I just want to thank this council and the work that you're doing, and we look forward to contributing to that however we can in the coming months and into the future. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much, Warren.
Warren raised his hand.
Oh, Warren, did you have a hand raised there?
I did. Thank you, Corey. I did. Just won't go away. I will after this comment. One thing we might consider putting on the agenda too is whether we've reached the point of needing any amendments to the act during the coming year. That might be a worthy topic for discussion in the October meeting. Maybe this is a little off. I don't know if this is out of order or not, but a friend sent me this during the course of this meeting, a quote from C.S. Lewis that says, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending." That's a pretty good mantra for what we're trying to do, isn't it? But the point is, the point of my comment is, should we be putting on the agenda whether there's any amendments to the act needed based on our experience to this point?
Do you have any suggestions? Are you seeing anything to date or needs you've seen, or what are you suggesting, Warren?
I know that Dan's mentioned a couple of things along the way, and Dan, I don't want to put you on the spot or ask you to respond in the spur of the moment, but let's at least consider that as an agenda item and probably get a list to you as the chair, well in advance of the meeting, so you could look at what those might be. That's the process I'd suggest anyhow.
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Any other comments? All right. Our next scheduled meeting was October 13th, and I understand that we have a conflict. Dan has a conflict. And Todd has some alternate dates that we could consider, if that's all right. If everybody could pull open your electronic minds.
Yeah, so that we can continue to use this nice facility and the AV staff here, I've looked at the schedule and it looks like there's some openings on these dates. I would need to confirm that with them, but I think we're pretty safe choosing one of these dates. The closest one to October 13th would be Tuesday, October 11th, or Friday, October 14th. If those are desirable options, those would be in the same week as the scheduled meeting. And there's 3 days. There's 3 days in the previous week too, if those don't work.
Is the 11th Columbus Day?
Monday's
the celebration.
Well,
or is it?
I think you're right. It might be Columbus Day.
Monday's Columbus Day.
I think the 11th is also the one Utah Summit.
Yes, I was just going to say that. So
Yeah, it is. It's showing as Monday the 10th is that day for the holiday. But Utah's is on the 11th. Okay. Yeah, it's always on the 11th. So that's maybe not the best day, but the 14th would work.
14th.
Okay.
Friday the 14th isn't good.
What about Wednesday? Go ahead, Warren.
Well, I think I'm going to ask the same thing you are. What would the morning of the 12th be suitable? The Water Task Force meets that afternoon. Would the morning be suitable for this meeting?
Natural Resources meets in the morning.
Oh, all right.
Let's see, that might be Salt Lake Chamber.
Interim's the next week on the 9th.
Yeah, that's the Salt Lake Chamber.
How about the previous week?
So the Wednesday the 5th, Thursday the 6th, and Friday the 7th are all available.
What about Wednesday the 5th for everybody?
It's a beautiful day.
In the morning would be best. I can't do
yeah, the morning's best for me too.
What about a later morning, not first thing in the morning, or first thing? That's fine too.
9:30.
Can we have the air quality board on the 5th, so earlier rather than later?
Yep.
What time would be good?
And for 1:30.
What time's the following meeting you're referring to? The air quality meeting? What time's that? That's at 1:30. What about 9 o'clock?
9 would be perfect.
9 o'clock on the 5th, is what we're saying?
Yep, 9 o'clock on Wednesday, October 5th. I will confirm that with the schedule, get that in the books, and then confirm that with you, Corey, as soon as possible.
Okay. Is everybody okay if we continue to try to schedule some little presentations like this just to help make people aware of statewide initiatives or information or things like that? That's all right. Okay, we'll continue to go down that path. Okay. If there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I had a programming note. You might have noticed that we didn't have the minutes available for review. And that's our oversight to have those approved. If it's okay with you, Chairman, we can bring this meeting's and the April 14th meeting notes, have them distributed prior to the next meeting, and then you can vote on both of those.
We'll do a 2-for-1 next time. Sounds good. Thank you, Todd. All right, motion?
Motion.
So moved. Second. We're good. Thank you. Appreciate everybody, and thank you for hosting us, for the technical help and everything everybody's doing. Thank you, everybody online, and for all you're doing.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, for guiding us.
Rachel just confirmed that that day is available, so we'll plan on it.
Great.